Amazon crashed half of the internet today, and the stock still ended up green. Let's get into the watch list, and let's talk about what moved the market today. All right, so the market actually ended up green today because Trump came out and started to downplay all of the China news, right? As we know, Trump did say that he would be imposing, a significant tariff on China if they do not come, to an agreement soon. So that was one of the first things that, added demand to the market today was, Trump cooling down the market, all that fear revolving around China, while at the same time, Apple hit an all-time high because of iPhone 17 sales, right? Last week we got news that the iPhone Air sold out in China, and we're still getting stats coming out that's saying that, this iPhone is one of the best selling and actually sold better than the iPhone 16. So, as Apple runs to all-time high, that's going to push the indexes up because, the S&P 500, SPY ETF, is a weighted ETF. So certain names hold more value, such as Apple. So when Apple goes up, that can significantly impact the market indexes. So when you pair Apple hitting all-time highs with Trump coming out and downplaying the China tariff news, well, that's why the market ended green today. And like I was just telling you guys, Amazon crashed half the internet today. And it was really interesting coming in today because, a lot of brokerages were not working. Most customers were not getting quotes. You would go into different websites and maybe things weren't loading. I mean, this impacted so many different companies. And, some of the names out there are Snapchat, Reddit, banks, and just so many companies were not working this morning, right? Because of Amazon Web Services, which was having an issue. And the stock still ended green. So I wanted to talk about this a little bit. I mean, how could there be such a huge outage and the market takes it as good news? Well, the reason behind this is that it actually shows, how much dependency there is on Amazon, right? And their company. I mean, they have so much business and they're intertwined in so many things that just an outage like this caused so many crashes. So investors were, it actually opened their eyes, right? They were like, oh my God, I didn't know, Amazon had this much, power and influence, right? So you actually saw that, right? Investors take it as a good thing, right? The stock market's a crazy place. Many people might have thought this would have sent the stock down this morning, but nope, went the other way. And, it caused a lot of people to realize how powerful Amazon is. Next thing I have for you, right? Trump came out and said that, China may actually pay a 155% tariff if no deal by November 1st. Now, as we know, when the news first came out, it was 100%, and Trump came out and actually said today 155% tariff. But, Trump has been kind of playing both sides here. He goes, we're going to tariff China, right? Because they stopped buying U.S. soybeans, and they did an export ban on critical minerals. But at the same time, he's coming out and saying, don't worry, we're going to get a deal with China. So what he's doing is he's playing both sides. So you have to be really careful. Now, Trump does meet with China's president in a couple weeks by the end of October. There's no confirmed date of when they'll actually meet, but there is this summit that is expected to start October 31st and last to November 1st. So, between one of those days, we could probably expect them to actually have their meeting and try to work all this out. And like I was telling you earlier about Trump coming out and cooling down the fear, well, he actually said today that we will end up with a strong trade deal with China. Okay? Now, to be determined, right? Coming up to November 1st, if this is going to happen. But definitely keep your eye open, right? For developing headlines on these China tariff rumors. Okay, I mean, the market's starting to run up after that news because we're in earnings mode and they're cooling down the fear. Okay, but that, these tariffs still could be implemented, right? If things don't go well. So it's definitely a risk on the table that you have to watch out for. So keep that in mind, guys. And, like I was saying, a lot of this comes down to China stop buying U.S. soybeans, because you can actually look at data, and this is the first time in the month of September, the first time in 7 years that China did not import any U.S. soybeans into their country. And at the same time, Trump is getting heated because he does not want to play, the rare earth game with China. Okay, so that's what's driving that narrative. So keep focused on all the headlines revolving around that. And last night we actually got news that Trump will announce Colombia tariff rate. Okay, because yesterday, Trump and the Colombian president were, arguing, because the Colombian president is getting mad because Trump has been, bombing Venezuelan boats, right, based on drug smuggling reports. So, Colombia president got mad because he says that, an innocent fisherman was killed in one of these bombings. But then Trump actually came back and said, no, you're just upset because you were actually involved in all of this drug smuggling, and you're just mad because we're bombing some of these drug boats and causing, something you're involved in to make you less money. So Trump came out and said, you know what, you're going to talk smack on me and try to change what's actually happening here. Well, we are going to implement tariffs on you. So on Tuesday, all right, Trump said we'll actually get that tariff headline and the percentage rate. So keep your eyes open for that. And I did try to do some research, right? How could we play this tariff news, right? So I was looking at, Colombia's biggest exports and seeing if we can get any direct exposure. If that's, Colombia ETFs, maybe if there's any ETFs that tracked coffee futures, right? Because one of Colombia's biggest exports is coffee. So I was going to see, okay, well, can we actually get any direct exposure to the Colombian market? And it was really hard to find this, okay? The only thing I could actually find was one Colombian, right, direct exposure ETF, and the ticker symbol is COLO. Now, since this is an ETF, right, it's a big basket of Colombian companies. So, right, for this name to actually come down, we would need to see, right, a real big hit to the Colombian economy based on these tariffs. Now, it's definitely in the cards, but it's a hard play to hit because the basket's super diversified. Now, if I could have it my way, I would try to go long, Colombian coffee, because the price is going to increase on Colombian coffee, if Trump imposes these tariffs. But the problem is there's no one direct way to actually go long Colombia coffee. You can do these things called U.S. coffee futures. But see, that involves, all of the coffee supply, not just directly Colombia. So it's really hard to get exposure. But after digging, I did find this one ETF, COLO. So definitely something to look into, right? And, just in general, watch out for Colombia. I keep saying Colombia, but coffee futures, right? Colombia does supply 10% of, the coffee supply. So there you go. There's your exposure to that. And like I was telling you before, the market ended, up 1% today based on Trump cooling down the China narrative. But at the same time, Apple, right, they launched the iPhone 17, and the shares were up over 4% today to hit a record high. To close, well, not close, but intraday, they were over a $4 trillion market cap. And when I was watching the market at close today, Apple actually started to take some candles down at close, which basically just signifies risk off. And, it's definitely something to watch out for. I mean, if these China tariffs do go into effect, one of the biggest names that are going to get hit is Apple. So you're seeing Apple run into all-time highs, right, with the iPhone demand. But it actually presents an interesting opportunity, because if Trump does implement these tariffs, now could actually be a time where you could go in and get downside exposure, right, for cheap. So keep that in mind, guys. I mean, Trump is coming out and cooling the markets and saying, hey, we're going to get a deal, but nothing's guaranteed here. So you could definitely get some exposure to the downside, right? And I think one of those direct ways is Apple's hitting all-time highs. Could definitely get a big move down. And like we saw today, there's a lot of profit taking coming in the close, because there's a lot of optimism around this name. But at the same time, people do know that there is a risk event coming into the end of the month with President Xi and President Trump meeting. So there you go. Next thing I have for you, right, NVO, name we have in our long-term portfolio, Novo Nordisk. Now, they're actually going to present new data on their Wegovy pill, right? As we all know, they have the fat shots, right, current injectables, but they have developed a oral pill for weight loss. And we're actually going to get significant data coming out of that company, okay? And the dates you have to be on the watch for are November 4th and November 5th. Because November 4th, that data, important data on that pill is going to drop, and then November 5th we'll actually get a presentation based on this data, okay? But you'll be able to get that data on November 4th. Now, the stock did pop today on that headline because there's optimism going into this event over, their oral Wegovy pill. But that's going to be, big information, big data. Like I said, you're hearing it here first, right? You can definitely, know about this, and it presents a trade opportunity and also something to know, right? Information for one of our long-term names. Also, what we have here is a SPAC, right? A SPAC is, a cheaper way for a company to list on the U.S. stock market without going through a lot of regulatory filings, and it's cheaper. And now you have some big names back in this SPAC, okay, like Donald Trump Jr., right? And basically, we don't know the ticker yet or what it's going to trade under, but, right, there was an acquisition company, and they're going to merge, and there's going to be a new name traded. And what they're going to do is they're going to use those funds to list this new company. Now, when we find out what this ticker is, I can see this name going absolutely crazy, right? Because you have, big names back in this SPAC, and, the market, there's a lot of bubble areas, and there's a lot of optimism, right? So definitely keep this in mind, right? Be on the lookout for, what company they actually decide to merge with and when this name goes live, right? If you're quick to this, right, you could play a big momentum move up on this SPAC. So keep your eyes peeled out for that. And then also, right, we're kicking into earnings season, right? We're already getting, right, all of the banks and financial earnings, but this week, right, we have a couple, other names sprinkled in there, such as Netflix, okay? Netflix is going to report their earnings report Tuesday after the bell. Now, one of the things I wanted people to be, keeping an eye out for, right, was to see if there was actually any cancellations, right, and turnover in subscribers, right, because Elon Musk came out before and was telling everyone, right, cancel your Netflix subscriptions, right, boycotting a lot of, left-leaning ideology that he was saying was in a lot of these Netflix shows. So, right, there's a lot of subscribers to Netflix, and, this earnings report will give a brief glimpse into seeing if, Elon Musk actually had any effect on, reducing Netflix subscribers or Netflix profitability for the quarter. So definitely something to keep out for. And then we also have defense contractors reporting, such as Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, and Northrop Grumman. So look out for these names to, to keep running, because there's been a lot of government spending with these government contractors. So these earnings reports on these names, you could see some pretty big moves after they report. So keep your eyes open for the government defense contractors, Netflix, and then also another name I have for you, Coca-Cola. Now, I want you guys to watch this earning just to see, consumer demand, in the soda industry, okay? And this could actually translate over to Pepsi, okay? This could be a sympathy play. So watch Coca-Cola earnings to see if it's bullish or bearish, and a sympathy play on Pepsi. And then now we're going in later into the week, okay? But this is Thursday. Intel reports Thursday after the close, okay? So keep your eyes peeled, guys, for Intel, because that's going to be a big name with the government stake. That's everything I have for you today, guys, okay? All right. As always, keep investing in a long-term portfolio, right? Keep your eyes open for the news, right? For all these headlines I'm giving you. You're getting this information first, and you can make some really awesome trades with this, and also play potential long-term investments. So stay safe, guys, and I'll see you on the next watch list. Peace.